Let's start this deep dive somewhere quiet. Imagine yourself standing by the bank of a river, a slow, familiar river. This river, what's the life you've carefully built, isn't it? The comfort you find in routines, the safety of paths you know by heart. You've settled there, put down roots. It feels solid, fixed, predictable. It feels like yours. But then you start to feel it. It's subtle at first. That quiet, almost imperceptible rising of the water. The ground under your feet, the ground you trusted, it softens a bit. The foundations of everything you thought you knew begin to tremble. And somewhere deep inside, that old familiar fear starts to stir. That gut-level anxiety that whispers, maybe shouts when the path dissolves. Everything washes away. That fear, that really profound discomfort we all feel with change. That's what drew us into the research for today. We've been exploring a whole range of thinking ancient Eastern philosophy, modern psychology on threat detection, writings about identity. Our aim today is really to unpack this resistance, this clinging, and maybe find some wisdom in the act of, well, letting go.
That panic you describe, it's so deeply human, isn't it? And what's really interesting is that the dread, it isn't just about losing the job, the house, the relationship. It's actually our resistance to a fundamental truth about how things are, a truth that's often quite hard to face.
You mean the idea that stability itself
is real?
Not real.
We chase stability, certainty, control, as if they're permanent states we can achieve and hold on to. But these wisdom traditions, especially insights from, say, early Buddhist thought, they point out that stability, in the way we crave it, it's largely an illusion.
Oh, so you're touching on that concept, Akapar. Impermanence. We hear the word, but it feels so abstract when, our whole day is built on things staying the same. How do we actually live that?
It's a massive psychological hurdle, absolutely. Anicca means everything. Your body, your thoughts, your feelings, the world around you, everything is in constant flux. Nothing lasts. It's the nature of reality. And yet our reaction, our default, is often to fight it. We build these emotional dams, try to freeze time, or cling so tightly to suffering we know just because the unknown feels, well, terrifying.
Right. And if we could just accept that the ground is already shifting, always shifting, then that resistance, that desperate holding on, that must be where the friction comes from, the suffering, what they call dukkha.
Precisely, dukkha. That deep, exhausting ache comes from trying to stop the river. And our brains are wired for this resistance. Psychology shows how our amygdala flags uncertainty as immediate danger. It screams that the system is collapsing.
Yeah, it feels like that. Like total annihilation is just around the corner. Not just losing the thing, but losing me, my whole self.
Yeah. And that feeling brings us right to the core, the really radical reframing these insights offer. The profound shift is realizing that everything you're terrified of losing. Well, it was never truly yours to keep in the first place, not in a permanent sense. Change doesn't actually destroy you. What it does is reveal that the you were so desperately clinging on to was always temporary anyway.
Okay, unpack that a bit. The you was temporary.
Well, in these deeper views, the self anatta is, the Pali term, isn't seen as a solid, unchanging thing, like a statue. It's more like a dynamic, continuous process. Think of a flame being passed from one candle to the next. The light continues, the energy flows, but the actual flame, it's renewed in every single moment. It's never precisely the same flame.
Okay. So if the self isn't this fixed monument, then the panic we feel when things change, it's not really mourning the loss of the self itself, but mourning a story about ourselves we can no longer tell.
That's exactly it. Beautifully put. You're not afraid of losing the job or the relationship or the identity marker. You're grieving the loss of the narrative that came with it. If you lose that role, successful professional, devoted partner, whatever it is you fear being stripped bare, left with nothing, we wear these roles like costumes, And when change asks us to take them off, we feel naked, exposed, as if our very existence is threatened.
I definitely recognize that feeling. Every big shift I've gone through felt like a kind of death at the time. A death of who I thought I was. But you mentioned the lotus flower. That image seems to turn that idea of death into something essential, necessary.
It's a powerful, essential metaphor, yes. The lotus seed starts in the mud, in darkness. But it can't bloom if it stays a hard, protected seed forever. To become the flower, the seed must crack open. It has to dissolve its old, rigid identity. That cracking isn't destruction, it's the necessary death that creates the space for new life to emerge.
Okay, so the dissolution makes way for the blooming.
Precisely. And if you look back honestly at your own life, you'll likely see it. Every major transformation, maybe a move, a breakup, a career change that felt like failure, it probably felt like a death blow in the moment. But looking back, didn't those very deaths become the rich, fertile compost for deeper, more resilient growth? The fear of loss is real, the grief is real, but it's often grief for the limiting story, not for your essential being.
That resonates. Philosophically, it makes a lot of sense. But then, what about day-to-day life? If everything is constantly flowing, constantly dying, and being reborn, how do we actually engage with life without feeling completely adrift, unmoored?
It requires a shift in focus, I think, moving away from just seeing change as these big catastrophic events and starting to notice the moment-to-moment continuous nature of it. Some ancient texts talk about reality as being made up of these incredibly brief flashes of experience, kadans, they're called, instantaneous moments. You are, in a very real sense, not the exact same person who started hearing this sentence. You're subtly renewed with every single breath, every heartbeat.
Wow. Okay, so change isn't just the big stuff. It's happening constantly, microsecond by microsecond.
Exactly, and we can even connect this ancient wisdom to modern neuroscience now. We know the brain has this incredible plasticity. It's constantly rewiring itself based on where we focus our attention, what we intend. So every time you consciously choose, say, courage over habitual comfort or curiosity over the need to be certain, you're actually participating in a micro act of death and rebirth right there in your neural pathways. You're letting an old connection fade to allow a new one to form.
It sounds like that we love the idea of the butterfly, the transformation completed, but we really, really hate the messy, uncertain process inside the cocoon.
We resist the cocoon stays intensely, don't we? So to work with this resistance, maybe we need to intentionally practice what we could call micro-deaths, small surrenders. We can draw on the concept of shoshin, the beginner's mind, approaching situations without the heavy baggage of, I know this, or I am this fixed identity.
Okay, Shoshin, beginner's mind. But what does a micro-death actually look like in practice? Because letting go can sound huge, like, sell your house and join a monastery kind of huge.
Oh no, it's usually much smaller, much more intimate than that. The point isn't dramatic upheaval, it's training the nervous system bit by bit to tolerate the feeling of uncertainty, of temporary emptiness. A micro-death could be as simple as canceling a plan you were rigidly clinging to out of sheer habit just to see what space opens up. Or maybe deliberately saying, I actually don't know the answer to that, when you feel that social pressure to pretend you do.
I see. So that small act kills off the identity of the person who always knows.
Exactly. It chips away at the fixed costume. Or perhaps it's deleting an app you habitually reach for to numb out when things feel difficult. That tiny act of choosing presence over avoidance, that's surrender. An initiation.
That feels much more manageable. Small, intentional releases, not necessarily big, dramatic renunciations.
Precisely. And you can even make it a quiet, personal ritual. Maybe an evening reflection. What story about myself died a little today? Was it a belief about how my future must look? Was it a need for control in a specific situation? A fantasy about a relationship? When you start to notice and even honor these small releases, you reframe them. They stop being frustrating losses and start feeling like necessary initiations. You begin to see that resisting change is like demanding that spring never follows winter. Every ending truly holds the seed of what's next.
This leads us towards, I think, the most challenging idea in all of this. The possibility of, radical release. If the self is just this temporary story, this flowing process, what's actually left when all the labels, parent, worker, achiever, sufferer, are stripped away? What remains in that silence?
You're pointing towards the immense liberating power of what's called shunyata. It's often translated as emptiness, but that word can be misleading in English.
Yeah, emptiness sounds, empty, nihilistic almost. Yeah, like nothing matters.
And that's a very common, understandable misinterpretation. Shunyata isn't nothingness in the sense of a void or absence. It's more like infinite openness, pure potential. It means that all things, your identity, your grief, your joys, your successes are empty of inherent, independent, fixed existence. They arise, they have form, but they are temporary and dependently originated, like a wave on the ocean.
A wave.
The wave has a definite, beautiful form, right? But it isn't fundamentally separate from the ocean. Its existence depends entirely on the water. When the wave crashes onto the shore, it hasn't vanished or gone somewhere else. It has simply returned to its source. Its form dissolved back into the potential from which it arose. The crashing wasn't a threat to the wave's essential nature. It revealed its nature. The deep truth here is, you are not a fixed entity being threatened by change. You are the process of change itself.
Wow. Okay, That is a fundamental shift. So our suffering, the dukkha, really kicks in when we mistake the story we tell ourselves, the narrative self, for the absolute unchanging truth of who we are.
Exactly. We suffer when we cling rigidly to the waveform, terrified of returning to the ocean. The moment we learn to hold that narrative lightly, to see it as a temporary manifestation, that's when we stop fighting reality. And maybe the first step towards that kind of resilience is to stop asking that deeply anxious question, who will I be if this changes? That question assumes there's a fixed who that's under threat.
Right. So instead of asking, who will I be, what should we ask?
Perhaps ask this instead. Who am I beneath the story? Who am I beneath all the labels, the roles, the history?
And when we do that, when we really sit with that question, stripping away the titles, the achievements, the failures, when we're just present,
Yeah.
what is left in that quiet space?
Yeah. What remains is awareness itself. A kind of spacious, open presence that witnesses all the waves of thought, feeling, sensation, identity arising and passing away. This awareness, it wasn't born when your story began, and it doesn't die when the story changes. It simply is. It's the unchanging background against which all change happens. This capacity to witness without needing to cling or identify, that is your true enduring home. It's where all transformation occurs, and it remains untouched by the shifting forms.
Spacious awareness.
And within that space, we can also start to see every loss, every difficulty, not as waste, but as sacred compost. Every pain, every failure, every disappointment. It breaks down, decomposes, and enriches the soil for future growth. The pain of loss eventually can deepen into compassion. Failure can become humility, genuine insight. Nothing is truly wasted.
So, okay, theory is one thing, but when we're right in it, that moment of free fall, the ground dissolving, the sheer panic, how do we connect with that spacious awareness then? How do we not just get swept away by the fear?
We don't necessarily try to eliminate the fear. We allow it to be there, but we try to anchor ourselves, even just for a moment, in the simple presence of this moment. There's a Zen story. Maybe it helps. A person is fleeing from a tiger, runs to the edge of a cliff, grabs onto a vine, and swings down. Dangling there, they look up, the tiger snarls. They look down, another beast waits below. Then they see two mice, one white, one black, gnawing away at the vine they're clinging to. Their time is clearly limited. In that moment of utter desperation, facing certain death, the person notices a wild strawberry growing from the cliff face nearby. They reach out, pluck it, and eat it. How sweet it tasted.
Wow. So even with the mice gnawing, the tigers waiting, there's still the strawberry, there's still the present moment's sweetness, or just its reality. The fear is there, but so is the immediate experience.
Exactly. The fear doesn't have to be the only reality. Your fear isn't necessarily a signal that something is wrong with the process. It might just be the feeling of shedding an old skin. It's an invitation to release your grip, to be present with what is. So maybe stop bracing against the current quite so hard. Feel the ground dissolving, yes. Feel the fear, yes. And then perhaps instead of screaming, I'm falling, try whispering to yourself, I'm flying.
Flying.
Right?
Because you're not actually losing your core self. You're shedding what no longer fits. You don't need to fear the river's flow.
You are the river. Let the old skin fall away. Trust somewhere deep in your bones that on the other side of every necessary ending, a version of yourself is waiting to be born, a self that has, in truth, been within you all along.
Thank you. That's incredibly helpful. That final invitation, don't scream, I'm falling. Whisper, I'm flying. That feels like a powerful thought for all of us, for you listening, to carry forward today. Thank you for guiding us through that.